Big news of the night. Tom Thibodeau is out as president and head coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Ryan Saunders named the interim head coach. Welcome to Game Time. Chris Miles here with Mike Fratello and Dennis Scott. Guys, this team seems to be headed in the right direction. Are you surprised that they're moving on from Tom Thibodeau right now?
I am shocked. When the news first came out, you look at the standings, they're 2 games out of the 8th spot, the last playoff spot. They're 5-3 in their last 8 games. Their 2 young stars seem to be coming alive, in particular, Karl Anthony Towns, who for 6-7 straight games has been spectacular. Today, Towns, along with Wiggins, both have 28 points in their victory. So the question is, why and why now?
The timing a little bit, Chris, but there has been a lot of issues with this team the last year and a half, so not a surprise. Now we have to find out a little bit more, and then we'll figure out how they get better from here on out.
To try to figure out what's happening, John Krasinski from The Athletic, he's a guy that has a lot of insight.
Got the sense that this was sort of building over the last days and really weeks, and really even dating back to the whole Jimmy Butler fiasco. I mean, when that thing went down, that was a huge hit to Tom Thibodeau's influence and power and responsibility here. And I think that was certainly what opened the door toward this move. And what Glenn Taylor said at that time was he wanted to evaluate how the team did after the trade. What he told me tonight was that he didn't think they were making enough progress. And so he made the move. Yeah, is it surprising that it happened after a 22-point win against the Lakers? Yes, but I do think that everyone knew Tom Thibodeau's seat was hot, and it was just, you were just wondering what straw was going to break the camel's back here.
Now, was there a line drawn in the sand between Karl Anthony Towns and Tibbs?
This wasn't a power struggle that Karl Anthony Towns won by any stretch of the imagination. I do think Tom had some difficulties in terms of his relationship with owner Glenn Taylor, with several others in the organization. I think some players in the locker room were a little frustrated at times with the lack of communication from Tom Thibodeau, but ultimately, I don't think this was one of those many cases that we've seen across the league where a star player doesn't like the coach and orchestrates his firing.
Look, Tibbs is known to be a disciplinarian. Hard practices, short bench, playing guys a lot of minutes, wear and tear on their bodies. We've seen Derrick Rose and Jimmy Butler, guys like that, have injuries throughout their career. Is his style of coaching on the way out?
I think you have to define a couple things. First, coaching, what style of coaching are you talking about? And then you have to define the person himself, because I put a quick list together of guys who I think their practices are probably pretty close to what Thibodeau runs. And I'll go with, how about Michael Malone in Denver, Popovich in San Antonio, Eric Spoelstra in Miami, Budenholzer now in Milwaukee, Brett Brown in Philly, Dwayne Casey in Detroit, Billy Donovan in Oklahoma City, Quinn Snyder in Utah. These are all guys who have disciplined, organized, hard practices, but the person is different. And how Thibs comes across may be different on how these guys come across. But the structure of their practices, what they're trying to get across, their philosophy of do you practice or don't you practice, that's what differentiates between different people.
No, I agree with you, Coach. I throw in Kenny Atkinson now in Brooklyn, the way he's turning around the culture and making guys practice longer, pay attention to detail. Let's just call it what it is. Now it's up for Towns and Wiggs to really step their games up. You talk about Malone in Denver, that young team with Jokic and all those guys. 2 years ago, they weren't playing defense. Now they're playing defense. So to Coach's point, Chris, maybe Tibbs' message is not being delivered. Maybe it's to your point, your question of his style. He's never been one of those coaches that's very vocal, where some of these coaches are, like Quinn Snyder in Utah. All the players talk about Quinn Snyder's door always being open, and you've been able to go in and talk about, Coach, my playing time. Now, Quinn may say, you're not playing right now, but that's the communication some players like to have, maybe Tibbs not being that transparent.
Let me say this. Tibbs probably would be better with a veteran team.
Right.
A bunch of veteran guys who've been around to understand this is what we have to do to win. But he didn't have a veteran team. So he's piecing together these young guys mixed with some old guys. And let's not take away any responsibility that should be on the players as well. It's not just Tibbs, okay? It's both sides. And that's where the meeting has to come between staff, roster, You both have to be on the same page in how you move forward. And a lot of times it's how you say it. We can say the same things, but say it differently, and it's interpreted differently.
And that's why with a young team, if you don't have that communication on the right level, that's how you lose teams and you lose some of your star players. So right now, you see to your point, Cat and Wiggs are playing better basketball, so that's why a lot of people are shocked at the timing, but understand this team has had some issues.
Certainly, Fred Hoiberg also mentioned as a possible candidate for that head coaching position or front office position, something we have to monitor going forward. Andrew Wiggins, you see that? Punched them in the mouth early. And Wiggins, he's not really looking at that, but it seemed like he did. He came out like the Andrew Wiggins we've been expecting to see for a long time, 3D.
Yeah, we know the talent's there. We know the athletic ability is there. When do you take that mindset, well, I want to be the best player on the court certain nights?
There was that dunk, and then there was this one.
Oh, my goodness. That's the athletic ability I'm talking about.
25 points at the half for Wiggins, 28 in the game. Second, third, fourth quarters, they belong to this guy. JaVale McGee have some from Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, that's a cat poster right there.
They call him Towns, maybe go city, state, country.
Ooh, let's
He's
call him
everything
block
on this
to block.
block.
Well, this guy's been on a roll now for the last, 6, 7 games?
Right.
Then there's the effort play. There's a beautiful play, and then there's the effort on the offensive glass. Not just this play, 3D, this one as well.
If there's anything that frustrates a coach, it's to see a player who is gifted, who has been blessed with incredible talent, that doesn't utilize that talent and max it out. And that comes from the heart. It comes from the extra effort. We saw examples of those plays right there.
Andrew Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns, both with 28 points. Towns with those 18 rebounds. And look at what he's done in his last 7 games. He has 6 consecutive games of at least 28 points. He's averaging 28 points over those last 7 games and 17 rebounds. Just a monster stat line over the past couple of weeks for Karl Anthony Towns. And we get to see him on Tuesday on Players Only. 3D, how do we say it?
Players only, baby.
It's a doubleheader. The 2-time defending champs hosting the New York Knicks. I'm sure 3D cooks
Bay
up something good for
Area.
that. The Raptors once again flexed their muscles against one of the other top teams in the East. We the North, we hear you. And the Wizards, they did something they haven't done in over a month. That's up next on Game Time. Out of Minnesota, Tom Thibodeau reportedly out as the president and head coach of the Timberwolves. According to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, Ryan Saunders looks like he's in the running to step in as the interim head coach. What do you think of that decision, 3D?
I like it a lot. Obviously, his dad kind of setting the way for him and being around the franchise pretty much his whole life. And I think Coach being young and understanding what Cat and Wig and this young team's about. Derrick Rose is having a phenomenal year, comeback year, so to speak. He's been a part of that movement, working out with him on days off. So the question for me, Coach, is what advice can he reach out to someone like yourself to help him with in-game coaching decisions, things of that nature? But being able to relate to players, knowing the system, I think he's ready for it.
First of all, we have to realize that they fired one of the top 5 coaches, in my opinion, in the NBA. Tom Thibodeau is a teacher. He's a game coach. He wins basketball games. So to make that decision, something was going on that we obviously don't know right now. The relationship with Saunders and the owner is the father connection. Flip Saunders was a very, very loyal person to the owner. And the owner, I think, always appreciated it. We'll never forget some of the things that Flip did for him along the way. I know this. Flip made him an awful lot of money at one point on one major decision that he had to make. And the owner, I don't ever think, is going to forget that.
Right.
And as a result, he's seen his son pay the dues. He respects what the son has done, respects the son and father, and therefore he's given him a chance.
Well, according to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, their source on Ryan Saunders being who Glenn Taylor wants as the head coach long term. So he's hoping that he can earn that spot. But we also have reports from multiple sources that Fred Hoiberg is in consideration for either the GM or the head coaching spot. So we're hearing two names out there. It's interesting because Fred Hoiberg was in Chicago following Tom Thibodeau, now could possibly follow him in Minnesota.
And they have Scott Layden still, I believe,
Yes, Scott Layden's
still
be the GM.
there. And Scott Layden gets along with everyone.
Yes.
Remember his pedigree, his background, coming out of that San Antonio program, a lot of people were after Scott Layden. So I think I hope Scott Layden's given a chance. If they bring Hoiberg in, can Layden and Hoiberg work together in the front office? That'd be something to look at.
Certainly a situation that is just now developing in Minnesota, but as we see this, you see Tom Thibodeau, like you say, a great coach in the league. Why make this move now, at this point in the season?
Well, obviously, we don't know exactly what's going on behind closed doors, but to Coach's point earlier, the way our league is going, Cat has a direct line to the ownership. We know Wiggs just signed his new contract. Most of us around the NBA were saying to ourselves, what's taking this team so long to be further along when you look at Denver and other young teams who are winning and playing top-notch basketball? Lately, they're 5-3, they're playing good, Cat's playing out of his mind. Maybe they wanted to pull the trigger now, Coach, to get ready for maybe some more trades possibly before February.
Certainly an interesting situation that we will keep you updated on as the night progresses.